everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony had a real, genuine day of Ohio State football, sort of. It struck me walking up the stairs in here. We only come in this stairwell up here and in this room 9 times a year or whatever it is. How different each of the last 4 walks up that stairwell have been. End of the Indiana game. They dominate another playoff team. Everything's rolling. Lose the Michigan game. The world is coming to an end. Ryan Day looks shell-shocked on the field. Beat Tennessee. Everyone kind of goes, all right, maybe they're not dead after all. And then today, you have a nice sunny day. They hand out national championship rings. A lot of the concerns about the offense are probably at least slightly mitigated. Now, I'm sure everyone's a little concerned about the defense, and we'll get there. But just what a bizarre series of emotional swings for the Ohio State fan base the last 4 times we've been in this room.
Yeah, way to bring up all of that. Way to bring up the badness.
It's trending well, Tony. It's trending well. You didn't see the rings. The rings are quite large, quite substantial.
So did they explain to you why there are 3 rings?
I assumed it was Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, National Championship. No?
Jerry Emick explained it over the PA in the press box. One is from the CFP for winning the national championship.
Okay.
One is from Ohio State for winning the national championship, and one is for making the CFP altogether. So.
Participation,
No.
ring.
Only 12 teams made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So they got the same ring that Indiana and SMU got.
I don't know I don't know if the ring came from the CFP.
Okay.
It may be an Ohio State ring from the CFP, where it's like there are no banners that would be raised for making the Final Four previously in football.
Yes. Yeah.
Where I think you're trying to establish hey, this is an accomplishment.
Got it.
And I think certainly the coach would like to establish that.
Yes.
Hey, this is a good thing. Look, we got rings. You can't fire me. We've got rings.
Yeah, and you're probably not going to average 3.0 rings per year, but if you're anywhere north of 1 on average, you're doing okay. I'm just looking at the setup we have, and I'm wearing a gray sweatshirt, a gray undershirt, a gray hat, and we're sitting in front of a gray wall, so I look like Zach Braff in Jersey, in Garden State, where he's wearing the green. So that's good. We definitely plan these things out, and we're very good at our jobs. Anyway, football.
One of those things is right. So, yes, we are here. I have no stats, no final score. I know the offense won. I had set the line at -3.5 for the offense, so the offense bettors won handily today, and the house took a beating.
I will say I am very surprised. I don't want to say intentionally skewed and corrupt. However, when the offense scores, they get the PAT. When the defense scores, Fahim Delane runs back a touchdown, an interception for a touchdown, do they get the PAT? No, they don't. Tony, is the system rigged?
Well, he got stopped at the 10.
But they gave him 6 points.
Yes, because it was an interception and a stop. And here's another thing, Tom. You're supposed to get 1 point for a punt, for forcing a punt. 3 and out, and you force a punt, you still only get the 3 points from the 3 and out. So it is skewed offensively.
They didn't give him a pick 6 on that?
No, he stopped him at the 10. He was tackled handily by a random offensive player. But overall, I think what I'm coming out of this with is going into this, it has been maybe a year since we saw Julian Sayin look like people talk about him. Mm-hmm. And that was early in spring last year when you see some moments you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Because the way he would climb into the pocket and he'd release and things like that. This was the best I've seen him probably ever. And he was consistent, and even a handful of his incompletions. One was Quincy Porter fell down. Another one, Max LeBlanc dropped a pass on a good read where he was getting pressured right up the middle, so he got it out to the tight end, and Max LeBlanc dropped it over on the sideline. Another one deep to Mylan Graham that Lorenzo Styles broke up. And it was, perfect passes, just really good defense. So overall, I thought Julian Sayin played really well. I think Jerry said he was 17 of 24 for 160-some yards, 150-some yards. And the 1 touchdown. But he led them on their first 3 touchdown drives of the day. And Lincoln didn't lead him on any drives until the second half. And he came back and had some touchdowns. But I was impressed with Julian Sayin. I think this is one of those performances. And it's not like Lincoln Keenholz was bad, but he started out slowly finished well. So, that's kind of the story of the entire spring for these quarterbacks.
Well, it feels like every time we are in a practice, you have one opinion 45 minutes in, and it's like, well, clearly this is the guy who's having a better day. And then you wait another 45 minutes, and then the story swings. And the first half of this game, it was like, well, we're going to have a whole bunch of people after the game yelling at us that we've been making it all up, and that, of course, Julian Sands can be the starter, and this isn't even close. And then in the second half, you saw Lincoln Kienholz look like we saw Lincoln Kienholz look like on Friday. And Julian Sands was solid, but didn't, was not a touchdown on, was not 7.0 points per drive like he was at one point. So this is still, sometimes you come out of the spring and Brian Day will say, well, we haven't really decided, still way too close to decide. And you kind of go, this is one where, based on what we've seen, and we've seen only about a third of the spring. We're the first two practices, and then the 10th or 9th, and then the 14th and the 15th. So we've seen 5 out of 15 practices, basically. And from what I've seen, I think you could certainly construct a very plausible, this is too close to call. I'm coming out of spring probably more or less where I came into spring, which is I think Julian Sands is probably leading for the quarterback battle right now. I don't know that you're going to get anyone to say that on the record. I just think there's a lot there that they like. But I don't, if it is Lincoln Kienholz, I think Lincoln Kienholz could absolutely lead them to the college football playoff again. I think they have 2 quarterbacks on this roster who this year are perfectly good college football playoff quarterbacks, and a third one who's probably going to be there in a year.
Yeah, it is interesting though if Billy Fessler did come out and say, yeah, this guy's leading, how much trouble would he be in from Ryan Day?
Yeah.
Because there are no leaders. I think you leave this game feeling better, especially if you've heard not just us, but other people talking about the quarterbacks in the spring. There wasn't a lot of people lighting things up. So to see 3 quarterbacks do pretty well overall, Lincoln had the 2 picks, I think, in this one. So that's a concern, but you did see him do those things that you're wanting to, whether it's downfield to Max Clare or Mylan Graham, and we could spend a little time on Mylan Graham here in a little bit, because he's making some waves. But overall, I think you leave. For the fans watching, you leave this feeling pretty good, and it is almost like everybody's been lying to us about the quarterbacks, and that's fine. It's better than us telling you, man, these guys have been lighting it up, and then they all come out and do throw 2 for 17.
Right.
So I'll take this over any kind of anything we've been doing previously.
Yeah, and it wasn't. There was not a perfect performance by any means, and so it's still, again, I see people in the comments going, oh, come on, of course it's going to be Sayin, and I do think Sayin is the front runner, but we've said that pretty consistently, but I don't think he has clearly won the job. I don't think, the standard is the standard around here, and the standard is this guy good enough to win a national championship? And right now, I don't know that he's, I think there's still work to be done. I think he could absolutely get there by the time the season starts, and certainly by the time the season ends. But I don't think he's there yet. And good news, you don't need to be there yet. How many times in previous years, Will Howard wasn't there this time last year. C.J. Stroud was not there in either of his years that he started. And he got there by the end of those seasons, and Will Howard certainly got there by the end of last season. There's a long way to go, and it's not just about the quarterback either. But I think the quarterback is one of those things where they don't have the answer, but the answer is probably, I think they probably have to feel like the answer is on their roster right now.
Were you in here for any of the Ryan Day? Like, how much were you?
Probably the second half of it.
Because I want to talk about the running backs right now, but in order to do that, we also have to talk about the upside down of the defensive tackles, because you only saw a little glimpse of James Peoples, and then he was done, which tells you he's the guy.
Yes.
C.J. Donaldson looked really, really good running against the second-team defensive line, and especially the tackles and staying in between the tackles. And that is a huge concern. That's the one thing that you're going to leave here, and that is where the concern is. And riding up on the elevator with a bunch of guys on the beat, I'm like, when we go in there and we talk to Ryan Day, remember how he was after the spring game in 2023, talking about the offensive line. That's how he's going to be talking about the tackles. And that's pretty much what he was like, where you could tell, like, no, this is
this is a problem,
and we're going to be looking at the portal, and so then I asked him, was this a conversation that you have, like, and not just defensive tackles, but when does that conversation start, and what's it like, and do you talk about it beforehand? He's like, well, you got to remember, we also lost 2 offensive linemen after the season that they have to replace, so they're going to be looking for offensive linemen in the portal, defensive linemen, and as he said, we're going to have to be to 105 this summer. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be looking, well, we're one short at this position. We're one short at quarterback. Mm-hmm. And then trying to find that addition. But we'll probably have an entire show about, what do you do at defensive tackle? And there's a lot of nuance and factors that go into that. But I was impressed with the running back. C.J. Donaldson looked good. Bo Jackson, I don't know if he went over your 34 yards rushing.
Well, he had a 20-yarder, and believe me, friends, I was very, very almost not at all on social media or texting or anything, just because everything is so fast-paced in this game that I'm just running back and forth and all that stuff. Believe me, friends, I took a moment to text my good friend Tony Gerdeman just to make sure he saw that Bo Jackson had a run of 20 yards.
Yeah, but he looked good, and he's fast and he's powerful, and Ryan Day said, it's true. Like, you can't really judge the running backs until they're being tackled by the opposing team. But then he also said, like, Bo Jackson looked pretty good.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
So well, everybody acknowledges Bo Jackson is pretty special.
There are just the freshmen every year where you kind of go, all right, like, this guy's going to be a dude at some point, and maybe not. He may not be that against Texas this year. He may or may not be that by October or November this year. A year from now, if this is James Peoples and Bo Jackson, oh boy, does Ohio State have a running back duo. I think you're having the same kinds of conversations we had this time last year about the running back duo. There's a long way to go. There's a lot of the really unsexy stuff that you've got to do to get from here to there. And we talk all the time about blitz pickup and pass pro and ball security and all that kind of stuff.
He caught the ball well.
He did. He caught the ball well. You saw today, I think, a little bit of what we've seen, just those little flashes of burst, strength to move the pile. There's just, there's it. You can see it, and you can see it with Bo Jackson, and we've seen it enough.
Every time.
That I think it's been every time. Yeah, really, about every. I mean, the first 2 times we saw were the first 2 days of practice. And okay. The last 3 times we've been in there, in the last week, it's been, you have noticed him. You have really noticed him. And as a true freshman, if you're consistently doing that, that tells me there's, there is some there.
So, and Sam Williams-Dixon had his second good spring game in a row. Tom, do you know what I'm calling him now? Say it. Say it.
Bam Williams-Dixon?
That's exactly right. Good job, Tom. What does he win, Kevin?
Have we been doing this too long together? Yes, maybe.
So,
hey, speaking of great nicknames, how about the PA guy? Did you hear after the last field goal, the PA guy goes, Jaden field goal with the kick.
Hey,
it's like, man, that is a tremendous
trademark
nickname.
That one.
Yes,
yeah,
that's tremendous.
But he's been very good all spring long as well, Jaden Fielding.
Yeah, that's one where that was a big concern coming out of last year, and there was enough grumbling throughout the course of the season with the kickoffs out of bounds, and then missing some kickoffs, and missing some field goals, and I still don't think he's made one over 50 in his career. And there was a lot of grumbling that, Ohio State should have a better kicker than this, and I think that's fair. But I think he mentioned, like, he was a little banged up last year, and this spring he's been really good and really consistent. And they have put him in spots where, at practice on Friday, they had him kick a sequence of field goals, and it was the whole team has to do up downs if you miss this field goal. So that's about as much pressure as you're going to get, because you're not the biggest dude on the team, and you don't want the whole team angry at you. And he drilled both of the ones there, and he was perfect on the day today. So I think that's one where you can at least kind of slide that off to the side in terms of, like, potential areas of concern this year.
And I don't know, you guys can go ahead and throw it in the comments if you guys know if Mylan Graham went over 100 yards today, because he had to be pretty close, because I think his touchdown was from 40-something, 49 yards, I believe, and that wasn't his only catch. But you can just see what the catch and the run. There's some Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson to his game, where he's snatching the ball now, and that's been one of the things they've been working on is just going, getting the ball, holding on to the ball, being strong with it, and being careful with it. But the athleticism, the burst, you see all of that there. And as Ryan Day said, he's got all of the ability to be the next great one at Ohio State. And it's like, well, that's great, but he might be like the number 5, the number 4 receiver. And the thing is, we just assume that it's Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Brandon Innes, and then there's Bryson Rogers, and then, Mylan Graham. But he has made more plays than I think any of the receivers that I've seen this spring in all of the practices. Now, is that because he's going against the twos at times?
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But, and is he better than Jeremiah Smith? No. Is he better than Carnell Tate? No. But he's just consistently making plays, and that's a guy that you have to find room for and snaps for, which lends me to believe that there is going to be a larger rotation this year, because how do you keep that guy off the field? And not just, how do you keep him from playing 15 or 20 snaps a game? Like that sort of thing, because he can make plays, he can help your quarterbacks. And he didn't get in the game this time, or he didn't get in the game today, that kind of seems like you're wasting him.
Yeah, and I see someone mentioning Quincy Porter, and I think Quincy Porter is probably in that conversation to some degree, probably not quite to the same degree as Mylan Graham, but this year I think you're looking for excuses to not play Jeremiah Smith at times, because Jeremiah Smith. I am fully expecting Jeremiah Smith's stats to go down a little bit this year, just because now, first of all, every defense in the world is going to key on him. But second of all, they're going to try and just keep him fresh. And think about, when did you have the big scary moment with Jeremiah Smith? Against Northwestern, with the guy twisting his ankle. I think they're going to probably be mindful of not, keeping him out of those types of situations where it's like, here's a team you can beat by 1 trillion points regardless. So do you need to have him out there? You're going to have, it's not like he's not going to play, but you're probably going to keep him off, keep him fresh, keep those legs fresh, all that kind of stuff, because you have other guys who you can put in and not have a big drop off. There's going to be a drop-off from Jeremiah Smith to literally any other player in college football, and that's fine. But there's not going to be an enormous, you're falling off a cliff from Jeremiah Smith to whoever's going in. They've got plenty of talent on this team, and they certainly have plenty of talent at receiver. And with the way they're moving guys around, and we've seen Brandon Innes inside and outside, and we've seen Carnell Tate inside and outside, and Jeremiah Smith moving inside and outside. It's not just, who's the backup X, and that person is going to be the person. No, they can just. You want to, if Mylan Graham is the 4th best receiver, you can put him in at wherever you want to put him in, and then slide someone else over to act. Whatever you want to do, you can move guys around as much as you want to.
Yeah, and I saw somebody ask how Jeremiah Smith did it. He had a quiet day. He had a couple of catches, but he's had a quiet spring because who cares?
Yeah,
Not really, but like he's what he can do, and you have an opportunity to get a bunch of other people work and. So that's what's going on. The tight ends looked really good again today. They were without Will Kazmarek again. Ryan Day said that he'll be back full go by the summer, so he's fine. But you saw pretty much everybody making plays. Max LeBlanc had a drop or two, and that's unfortunate. But you saw Max Clare down the seam. That's why you went and got him for the downfield stuff. And it was interesting because he's not the only guy that they went to downfield. And there's a lot there with this tight end room. We talked about it before the game. Like it's maybe the deepest room, one position room, the most talented one position room maybe in the country. And now you got to use them. But the thing is, like we were just talking, how are you gonna keep Mylan Graham off the field?
Yeah.
It's like the tight ends are like, we think we should play 12 personnel, and everybody else is like, yeah, probably, because they're all really good. So, the best possible problem to have once the portal window closes.
And I think we'll see what things look like after the portal window closes. But the way they have used tight ends in the past, they ran 13 personnel. They ran 14 personnel on the goal line at points last year. So you're going to, if you're one of the guys who's in the top 3 or 4, you're going to play. You're going to see the field. And you're certainly going to have, you certainly have different roles there as well, where you've got Max Clare, who's really kind of a receiving tight end, and you get Will Kazmarek, who's like a blocking tight end. And obviously, Kazmarek can also catch, and Clare can also block, but you have different roles for these guys, and that makes a big difference in terms of being able to shuffle through and really provide a lot of opportunities for different guys.
So we did finally get the stats here, Tom.
Oh, okay.
Your guy, Bo Jackson, 13 for 88. So
Is that more than 35, 34?
Just barely made the 34 yards. Sam Williams-Dixon, another 11 for 64. But yeah, James Peoples, 2 for 6. That tells you pretty much all you need to know. And then C.J. Donaldson, 4 for 35. Again, those are your top 2 guys right now. Marlon Graham, 4 for 104. Quincy Porter, 4 for 50. Yeah. So Jelani Thurman had 2 catches, and I'm just looking to see anybody else standing out there. Nate Roberts, 4 for 41, true freshman tight end that they really, really like. Jeremiah Smith, 4 for 19. And that 5 yards a catch isn't going to get it done.
That's not exactly 5 yards a catch, a little short of 5 yards a catch. So, yeah, is it time to panic? Listen, maybe.
Maybe. It's not time to panic. Sam Williams-Dixon.
Now, to be clear, Jeremiah Smith did have 4 catches on 2 targets, which is pretty good. So
That's a good point.
All stats are unofficial.
Yes, unofficial, very much so. Don't hold these against us. And Max Clare, 2 for 28 with that touchdown. So overall, here's the total quarterback stats: 40 for 57 for 449 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks. This defense.
Yeah, so I'm trying to decide what adjustment we need to apply to that, because you normally would say divide it by 2, except it's a shorter game, so it's like divide it by...
But they're also throwing a lot more than they normally would, so maybe just divide it by 2.
Yeah, so you're 20 for 28 for 275 yards and a couple touchdowns and a pick. I mean, that's not great, but it's not terrible.
And some of these sacks would never happen, so maybe increase the passing numbers. But overall, all of the quarterbacks completed a good percentage of their passes, which I think is something that you have to be happy about.
Well, and it's very unusual for this time of year. So how many years have we been at the spring game and the quarterbacks are completing 37% of their passes, and it's everyone is below 43%, and you go, oh boy, and that's sort of the baseline expectation for this time of year, and you didn't have that. Now, Ryan Day also talked during the press conference about the fact that they've done a bunch of install on defense this spring. They didn't run most of it. They kept it very vanilla. So, I think we're also at a point where it is probably not yet time to crack each other's heads open and feast on the goo inside because of the defense and the way the offense went up and down the field. To me, I look at that and I go, that's good. Like, that's what this offense should look like against a defense that's keeping things basic, even a talented one that's keeping things relatively basic. That, I think, is good news more so than, well, they kept it basic, but the offense, oh boy, the offense is,
really we don't have any defensive stats, but I know Logan George was having his way with the line. I guess C.J. Hicks was doing well against Phillip Daniels in there as well, but once they get past Edric Houston and Caden McDonald, there is a huge concern, because that's when the offense is just moving right down the field repeatedly. So that's going to be something that they have to address. Linebackers, Peyton Pierce had a couple of good plays. Riley Pettyjohn chasing somebody down for like a 4-yard loss. I think it was a toss out to Sam Williams-Dixon, and he chased him down to the sideline, and that was a good one. Overall, any thoughts on the front 7 that we saw today?
Well, my biggest thought was watching C.J. Donaldson rip through the second team defensive line, just right between the tackles, and it was like, well, the good news is this is the best we've seen C.J. Donaldson look. The bad news is, oh boy.
And the thing is, I think at that point the offensive line would be at left guard a true freshman Jake Cook, a redshirt sophomore Josh Padilla at center, redshirt freshman Gabe Van Sickle. So it's like these guys have never played, have not played, and yet they're moving these 3rd, 4th, 5th year guys right down the field. So that's something that they're going to have to address, and however they choose to do it or attempt to do it, good luck there for them.
Yeah, I think that was an area, the interior of the defensive line was an area where we came in to the spring thinking this is an area of at least, I don't know if it's concern, but it's certainly an area that's going to be worth monitoring. I've used this analogy before, but you go to the dentist and the dentist kind of goes, we're going to keep an eye on that. And it's like, it's not a cavity yet, but like, we're going to keep it. We'll check the next time you're coming in. Well, the next dentist appointment has come in, and the dentist is still kind of frowning and is like, and there was, I think the hope was, okay, you're going to see a little bit, you're going to see some growth, and some of these guys who are in their third year, fourth year are going to, this is when the light's going to come on, and they're going to be ready to go, and you had the credentials with a lot of these guys who were pretty highly touted in terms of recruiting, and then it just, for whatever reason, it just hasn't gotten to the point that it needs to get, and now that was about as clear sometimes when coaches are talking in a press conference like this, they're saying stuff and they're talking to their team through the media. That felt like Ryan Day a little bit talking to the college football community on the whole. Hey, friends, if you're a defensive tackle with an impressive CV and you were to enter the portal, hypothetically, like, you might draw some attention from the defending national champions in Columbus, Ohio.
Well, and the agents certainly are aware of, that this is going on. Mm-hmm. And so, as we said this morning, the bat signal has been sent out for sure. The secondary, you saw Fahim Delane with that interception. Nice return there. That was a bad throw. Aaron Scott had some nice moments in this one. We finally got to see Davis Nigmanostin get attacked a little bit, so that was good. Jermaine Matthews did not have his customary interception, so I don't know what's wrong with him right now. But overall, I think they're still looking pretty good. Lorenzo Styles continues to look good and better than I expected, frankly, at that nickel position. And Aaron Bryce West is right behind him pushing as well. So secondary seems fine to me. And then Inky Jones, the walk-on safety playing corner this year, had a nice interception as well.
Yeah, he's someone who, former walk-on, which I guess every walk-on is a former walk-on at this point, but out of Steubenville, and he's someone who you've just you keep seeing him, and he just kind of keeps popping up, and you much more so than a typical walk-on, and at some point that stops being a coincidence. And no one is saying like this is someone who's going to win a starting job this year, but he's someone who you just keep sort of seeing, and he's not in the top 4 probably, but that's okay. You're working your way to the point where that's the kind of depth that you need to have. And he has just been very consistently impressive and had a really nice play on Saturday.
It was also interesting. At one point, Lorenzo Styles was playing corner and Jermaine Matthews was playing nickel. Mm-hmm. So I think they also have depth at corner that Lorenzo Styles can play there, Bryce West can play there if need be. Overall, I think we've run through all of the positions. If do we want to attack some of these questions? Do you have anything else that you wanted to add before we turn it over to the people that matter?
No.
Is that you don't want to turn it over to the people that matter?
No, I don't have. Any strong. I don't think I have anything else. So, Andrew Steele says, "How does everyone feel about Matt Patricia? I've been pleasantly surprised so far."
Did you miss the part about giving up 449 yards passing today? But,
you have to divide that in half, Tony.
He was on the sideline for both. But overall, everybody talks really highly of him. It's hard to find a guy that is more excited to be here than he is. But yeah, this is a very basic day. They're still installing, as you said, so there's a long way to go. But I've not heard anybody. There's no buyer's remorse at this point. There's no I don't know that. But would it be here yet anyway?
Well, I think it's hard to look at someone this time of year and go, this will never work. And I don't think there's any reason to be having anyone do that at this point. But he has been so consistently happy and upbeat in interviews that I've kind of wondered, we don't have enough basis to know, is he just always like this? Or is this, when you've been around a coach for a couple of years, you can kind of tell. Ryan Day at this point, we can tell how practice has been, what practice was like based on what Ryan Day's mood is after practice. You always wonder with a new guy, is this just, I'm trying to put a good face on this and I'm supposed to be I was watching him out on the field, when no one else is watching. There's not very many people out in the stadium. He's out there laughing and having fun, and I think he's really enjoying life in as a college defensive coordinator. I think he's also probably enjoying, with the Patriots, he had a lot of talent, but he didn't have, like, you can just roll the helmets out and out-talent 2/3 of your schedule kind of talent on his team. This is going to be probably a first time for him, and he's got so many different pieces. You look at someone like C.J. Hicks, who he's such a unique athlete and has not really been in this position, and you're starting to see it. Now, I don't have a great vantage point for a lot of this stuff, and especially for this where I was kind of half of the time on one side of the team and half of the time on the other side of the team. But it felt like C.J. Hicks there were a couple plays in a row where one of them he got called for a penalty for a hands to the face where whoever the right tackle was Philip Daniels was like really extremely holding him, and probably I saw the flag and I'm like, he's going to get a holding call, and then he didn't, and then got a sack on the next one. You're sort of seeing it with him, I think, to a certain degree. We'll see how much that translates to the season and all that kind of stuff, but just people like him, people like Caleb Downs, you don't have that kind of an advantage in the NFL, and so that's probably a new and exciting thing for Matt Patricia.
No, and one of the things that New England was able to do and was good at was grabbing players that not everybody else wanted and finding something that they did well and then utilizing them. So that's something that Matt Patricia wants to do here with players who are good enough that the other teams would like to have, but also I could do some stuff with them.
People are fighting in the comments about the Michigan game, so that's great. Anyway, we have to be upset about
Wasn't
something.
it that last year?
Yeah, roughly, yes. Lisa says, anyone go to the game? How was the weather? We actually did go to the game, believe it or not, and it was genuinely pleasant. I had like a coat and gloves, and it was fine. It was in the sun. It was warm. It was probably in the low 50s and sunny and not very windy. It was a genuinely pleasant spring game day.
I could not disagree more. I got to the press box, and it was 1,000 degrees in the front row. Moved up to the second row where it was 600 degrees, and moved back to the third row where it was only about 85.
So you did like a sous vide, basically, in the third row of the press box?
So you just get cooked in that place. But always glad to be there, of course. And sat in the third row today for the first time in a very long time, maybe the first time ever. Just to get out of the sun, but then also it's a rougher view. Just you can't see the scoreboard and any of that, but and really the score was the most important thing today, which is unfortunate.
Signy Yog says, I actually think St. Clair has the most upside, but he's a ways away. I think I would agree with that because you heard Ryan Day after the game talking about Julian Sayin. I think, and there's a lot to like about Julian Sayin, but Julian Sayin is not the biggest quarterback in the world. He's not the traditional 6'4" pocket passer who can, easily see over your tackles, and you're not going to get passes batted down, all that kind of stuff. You heard Ryan Day talk about some of the mechanical stuff with saying that can lead to passes getting batted down. St. Clair, I think, is probably just the best, I'm going to guess, the best overall athlete in terms of like size, speed, strength, everything. I think the ceiling is highest there, but he's a year away, man. This time next year, when we're sitting in here talking about the spring game, I think you might be talking about, people are very excited about Julian Sayin they may be excited about Julian Sayin, but I think they're also going to be excited about Tavian St. Clair, because when it sort of comes on for him, when the light sort of comes on for him, we have seen him grow so much in the last few years. There's so much talent there, and you see that the strength, the understanding of the game, all of that kind of stuff has come so far so quick. He's someone who's putting in the work, and if you put in the work at Ohio State and you have the physical tools, it does tend to happen for you, especially in that quarterback room.
Next year, Ohio State's going to have their own Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning thing, where you've got the redshirt freshman that everybody wants to see, and get them out there, and you got the established starters but I'm here too. And it's like, no, you're not. We want the young guy.
Robert Howard says, my prognosis, this team will be fine. It'll be fun to watch them grow throughout the season and to see how good they can be by late October.
And they're trying to be ready for Texas, which means they got to be ready right away. So they're going to be working hard towards that. But as you know, the end of the season doesn't end if you lose that. It sets the tone of where you are and where you need to be. But yeah, they're going to be as talented as just about anybody else in the country. So and that's in August. So as they continue to get better and develop, October, November, December, like they should have as much as anybody else and more. So there's no reason that you couldn't. Don't expect a national championship. I always say don't expect it, but there's no reason that they have the same or better chance as anybody else this year, which is generally where they are.
Yeah, this is a team that is going to be in the national championship conversation every season. You're not going to win it every year. I mean, you look at the wall in the stadium, and boy, there are not that many years up there. And there was 10 years between the last couple, and then 12 years before the ones between that, and then 34 years before. You know, I think it is realistic to expect Ohio State to win the national championship about once a decade. About. So you got a little time when you're going to be able to coast, and they absolutely could do it again this year. 100%. They could do it again next year. This is a team that's going to be in that conversation, and with the format of the playoff, putting them, giving them a way in more often than not at this point. I think they would have made the playoff basically every year since 2014 under the current system. This is a team that, with as much talent as you've got, if you're in, you're one of the teams that no one wants to play. And so we'll see. A lot of these games are going to come down to a play or two here or there, and that's, you can't expect to win a national championship every year, but I think you can expect to be at least in the conversation, in the playoff. You win a game, something like that. That's not a bad season at this point.
Well, and making the playoffs, they don't just give rings to everybody for doing that.
That's actually this just in. Odysseus wants to know who won bold predictions, and does the loser get the cot of shame in Seattle?
No, because there will be other games before that Washington game. So this is just one of 15 practices for us. This is no big deal. But Tom, you won it with the Bo Jackson rushing for more than 34 yards or 35 yards or more, plus a 17-yarder. I fell short on on all of mine, frankly. When Fahim Delane was running that near pick six back, I'm like, did I say Fahim Delane or Devin Sanchez? No, I said Devin Sanchez. And C.J. Hicks may have gotten his 2 sacks. I know he had 1, but I don't know that he got that sack. Doesn't really matter. The 1 point was plenty. You did have Lincoln Kienholz. He did throw a touchdown pass to Max Clare, I believe, which would have been great if that would have been the only one for me. But no, Tom won. Congratulations. Let's move on. Next question,
and
please.
I will remind you, we do have a trip to Big Ten Media Days. So, Tony, what happens in the cot of shame stays in the cot of shame.
Here's the thing. In Vegas, I can buy my own room for $20 a night there in the nice hotels because they're just giving them away in the dead of July.
Have you no honor?
Does
the cot of shame mean nothing to you?
Do I have any honor? The spring game? Like, is this what we're talking about? Come on. Practice? Spring game?
Playoff. Signiog says, biggest winner today equals Mylan Graham. Frankly, I don't want to make this all about us.
Right.
But if you pull up the stats, who was the leading rusher?
Bo Jackson? No. Let me pull him up here. Yeah, Bo Jackson, 13 for 88.
Who was the leading receiver today?
Mylan Graham.
Tony, who were the 2 young guys who we talked about being most interested in seeing in terms of running back and wide receiver today?
Those 2 guys. And then we also mentioned Quincy Porter, 4 for 50. He was number 3. So,
and I was surprised at how much he played because he was in that limited contact jersey yesterday, which we told you at the time. He was doing enough stuff that it was like, okay, this is not actually a concern. But he seemed like there was no limitation whatsoever today.
Yeah, so what happened with Quincy Porter and another player fighting? That's from Christian Penn. I did not see anything.
That was Aaron Scott. Yeah, I think they were just
he's feisty.
I think they were just, it was just kind of like a blocking downfield thing. I kind of saw the end of it. I think I might have a picture of it. But, that happens so much at these practices. And it's not like, sounds like Springfield's got a discipline problem. No, it's
culture issue
because he's from Springfield. See, no, it's that happens with every football team in America, high school, college. Like that's a little bit of pushing and shoving like that. That was not a helmet swinging guy with Ned on his jersey coming out on crutches. Like it wasn't like that. It wasn't that was like a pushing and shoving. Yeah. That happens at virtually every practice, especially at the end of summer camp, at the end of spring ball, where these guys have been banging into each other for 15 practices now. They're a little tired of each other, so now they get to take a little break.
Final question here, I think, from Signiog. I would love to see Tyler Bowen in the box with Brian Hartline. Bowen was an offensive coordinator. We have 2 other O-line coaches to be out there on the field. We were talking about the same thing upstairs, where you can do this a number of ways, and you'll have experience wherever you want it. Like, do you want Tyler Bowen down on the field and then have one of the other offensive line coaches upstairs helping with the vision, or do you want, if you have Brian Hartline and Bowen both upstairs, then that's one experienced offensive coordinator and Brian Hartline, or do you want, if Hartline is going to be on the field, having Tyler Bowen up in the box would be like his Kevin Wilson type of thing. But I guess Hartline was in the press box for the first half and then on the field in the second half, which is interesting that, which way did you prefer, basically? Yeah. So when we talk to him, maybe next month, we can find out what went best. But it didn't seem like either went poorly for them.
No, I saw that. I have pictures of him in both places because I was really curious about that. And I thought, I wonder if this is, I'm going to try it both ways and see if I like one better than the other. And so you got it. The offense looked fine in both halves. Ryan Day talked about that a little bit on the postgame show and discussing, that it seemed like it went relatively smoothly. And then they're going to be back in here and they're going to do this several more times during fall camp, during scrimmages, to be able to kind of get a better sense for testing all this kind of stuff out. Last year, all that conversation was about the helmet communication and all that, and that now there were no questions about that because it's like this is like, oh yeah, and
I don't know if there's been a single question about helmet communication this spring.
No, I mean they had plenty of games to figure it out last year, and obviously it went fine. So now that's not a concern anymore. That's just that's just like, well, are you worried that they won't be able to get the down marker set? Like, no, that's a thing that's old news. Now you're figuring out how that's going to work, and this is Hartline's first time doing this, so you probably makes sense you want to try it a couple different ways. Matt Patricia was down on the sidelines the whole game, so I would assume he's up in the box during the season. I would think, but
I don't know where he was with New England. Like, I don't know if that was a
well. And what was interesting was he and Tim Walton were both on the sideline. So, and I think Tyler Bowen on the sideline? I think he might have been.
I believe he was.
I think he might have been. So
at least when I saw him, which
yeah. So yeah, they had a lot of guys on the sideline. So that's not necessarily a definitive answer on where everyone's going to be for the fall. But Hartline being up there in the first half felt like that feels like that's probably the more likely answer, but we'll see.
And as Neok said, being in the box means nothing if the defense is only playing 2 sets. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
We're not looking to where can we dial up the blitzes? I don't know. I need to be up in the box to get a better idea of what I'm seeing. Yeah, so no, that's not really an issue there.
We're calling rock or we're calling paper. Can we call scissors? No, that's save it for the fall. Texas, you can't show scissors to Texas.
I think it was last year watching like Lorenzo Styles at nickel, or maybe last year or the year before, where every play he just would just drop back, and that was it. Like he would just drop back like in intermediate, and that's that. I'm just going to be here, and if the play comes here, then that's I'm just doing my job. I do agree with Chocolate Chips Scoochie here, saying Lincoln also can't really showcase all of his. It always moves as I'm reading it. Showcase all of his talents because we saw him run a little bit, and he's remarkable multi-sport athlete, but also just like a really good athlete. Will probably run in the 4.6s when he hits to the NFL Combine, and it's just now about being more consistent. But yeah, it's one of those things where if Julian Sand got sacked, I think 3 times, and I don't know that maybe one of those was just he was rolling out and he just got that, and they blew it dead, and he was going to create a play. But yeah, Lincoln, he can do some things. You saw him against Missouri running for his life, doing his best to showcase all of that athleticism and all of that. Do we have anything, Tom? You got anything else? Do we have anything else that we want to touch on? Are we good?
I think we're good.
I think we've covered it all. Tom, what was the final score? Let's just put him on the spot.
Well, did they give him the PAT for the last one? Yeah, I think they did. Did they kick it on the last touchdown? I don't think they actually kicked it, so I'm going to say it was 50-42.
Well, nothing there.
Well, they don't have the score in the actual stats. So the attendance unofficial 40,136. That felt like about the right
Yeah.
number.
Put it
What's
this way: there were more people inside Ohio Stadium today than there were Tennessee fans the
Yeah,
last time.
that is
inside
true.
Ohio Stadium. So this is a small number by Ohio State spring game standards, but I suspect, Tony. Here's my bold prediction for the 2026 spring game: they're not ever going to call it a spring showcase ever again.
never again? I thought they should have just made the attendance 43,210 because that is
That's
the campus zip code.
Yes.
Yeah, it would have made more sense. Anyway, Kevin, please do not give me that disproving look. Anyway, if you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and hit this thumbs up. We would appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. And of course, you can always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com, where we're still going to be breaking all of this down, talking about the spring transfer portal window. Get ready for the hot stove league coming here in a force and all of its goodness and badness. And we'll be talking about it there on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all later.